welcome to another episode of Lectures of Fallen Wisdom. Today I'm going to talk about how to hold your face for focus. How to hold your face so that you're in the moment and not in your head. First, make a vertical line between a line of skin, a fold between your two eyes above your nose. Practice doing that. If you're having a hard time doing that, if you've never done that, you got to start getting into the process of doing it, especially if you have a hard time of staying in the present. Because if you want to be a time traveler, one thing you got to have is your bearings at all times. You have to be in the moment. Time travelers who don't do that end up insane. Before we can teach you time travel, we have to teach you how to focus. So focus starts with a crease between your eyes. But that's not enough. You also need to bring your forehead forward. If you're not able to move your forehead with the muscles in your head, now's the time to try it. Move it forward until you create, along with the line in between your eyes, several vertical lines above it. And the vertical line should be dipping in the direction the horizontal lines should dip in the center right above the middle line that you're creating, the vertical line that you're creating. So what should look like in your forehead is a kind of T with two tops, 2 or 3 tops, depending how big your forehead is. But the thing is this is how your forehead should be at all times. Whenever you get a chance, just bring your forehead back to this. And that will help you to keep your focus, and it'll help you to keep your breathing up. It'll help you to just be in the present. It's just a way of creating a presence. Now, another good practice to do is to lick your finger. I know in this time of COVID it might be not a good idea, but lick your finger and then run some spit across your eyebrow. Sometimes that can just get you into the present. It's just we're always trying to just stop from recessing into the mind, because we want to be in the moment, and we want that to be our permanent state, because there's no happiness in any other way. You cannot be happy unless you're in the moment. And you can't be in the moment if you're always just floating into the back of your head whenever you're not paying attention. So this is just an added protection of attention. So you make sure your brow is furrowed in that way that I've described. And then take your tongue and place it flat up against the roof of your mouth, like you're saying the N word. Don't say it out loud, especially if you're not black. And so you put that tongue up there, and you're saying N, and you're just holding it there. And what it's doing is it's holding up the roof of your mouth. And then you have your mouth slightly open. And that's kind of how whenever your attention wanes, that's how your face should always be positioned. And you'll notice that if you keep your face like that, you'll never look bad in pictures. Because what's happened in most people's cases is that they're getting a picture taken of them when they're not focused. And when you're just kind of getting a picture taken, most of the time, you're not focused. They're focused on you. And so you lower your focus. Even though you might smile, you're kind of smiling and like letting go of all of the focus in your face. So you look like some ugly clown. And that just happens, especially if you're on some kind of drug. Because that's the problem with any kind of intoxicant, is that it does throw you back into the heady version of yourself. And though it might be more positive in this case, the addiction is about, it's still not in the present. And the more you can just be in the present without any kind of enhancement, the more you'll be better equipped. Now, I'm not saying you should never take some kind of enhancement, but it needs to be few and far between. There needs to be time for your sober mind to breathe and to learn from the experience. If you think of drugs, it's like training wheels for perception. If you always have them on, then you are a pretty lame bike rider. You know, if you're like an adult with training wheels, it looks pretty stupid and people laugh at you. So make no mistake, if you're not giving yourself a break between use of any kind of intoxicant, people are laughing at you. And they should laugh at you because you're a clown. So that being said, you want to stay like a student-teacher relationship when it comes to intoxicants. You don't always want to be under the teacher. You want to be able to go out and venture on your own and form psychedelic experiences sober in the moment. Being able to see the miracle that you're missing while you're up in your head thinking about some bullshit. So you're holding your tongue up against the roof of your mouth. You're breathing through your nose, keeping your mouth closed, but with your teeth slightly open, being kind of pushed open by your tongue. And at the same time, you have your brow not like hard furrowed, although you can go into a hard furrow to establish it. But for the most part, it should be a kind of loose version of it where you're in the middle of the furrow. So you don't want to go hardcore always with like this crazy furrow, because then the effect of that furrow when it needs to be shown to somebody is more effective. But you should always have a slight furrow, and like you'll notice that all the leading men have that. And that's what makes them attractive to people, is that they have a centerizing furrow in their brow that sort of points down into their eyes and directs attention to their eyes. Whereas people who are unfocused, they often go bald because of it, because the blood is just not getting to that part of their head. So if you have an issue with baldness, if you're losing your hair, bring your forehead forward, furrow your brow, and your hair may just come back. Though sometimes, it is a lost cause. And, there's nothing wrong with being bald. If some people need to get bald to learn how to get their focus back, they have to overcome it, and it actually ends up being a benefit to them. Look at Tupac. People say, well, but actually he wasn't really bald, but I think he was kind of getting there. And in a way, it was his asset to have no hair. So you can turn it into your asset. You can turn any deformity into your asset when it comes to the world we're in, because people will, if you have charisma despite your deficit, you have extra charisma just because of it. So it gives you a sort of power that you didn't have before, that people who don't have that deficit, they have the power. Whenever you have to overcome some kind of limitation, you're actually stronger than the person that didn't have to overcome it. So there's never, negativity is just stupid, because it always affects you positively in the end, especially if you're on the right track and if you're keeping yourself focused and you're not reacting egoistic way to the things that are happening to you. And guess what? The only way that you actually fall into that trap and act in an egoistic way is if you're not present, is if your brow is not furrowed, if your breathing is not good, if your tongue is not at the roof of your mouth, if you're not in the moment and absorbing the moment and feeling the importance of it every moment of the day and reveling in it, then you are asleep and you're falling prey to the things that most people fall prey to, and that's why they do the things they do. They're acting out of unconscious ego. And what we want to be is conscious, God-like creatures in this flesh. And the only way we can do that is if we just stop floating out of it mentally. So there's breathing, there's the brow, you can set alarm clocks on your phone to restart your breathing. I almost want to invent some kind of, little thing that goes on your arm that kind of vibrates to just remind you to take a deep breath, hold it, let it out, take a deep breath, hold it, let it out, until you start to feel good again. If you're ever thinking in a way that you're like not feeling good, you have to take 3 breaths before you do anything else, before you try to evaluate anything, before you think another thought. 3 breaths is all it takes to understand where you are and whether you are feeling really bad for a reason, or whether it's just because you weren't taking in enough oxygen. So the establishment of the brow, and then I've mentioned this in other podcasts, the sucking in of the asshole, the anus. I mean, it connects to the brow. So as you're pulling down your forehead, you're sucking up in your anus, and you're kind of creating a knot between those two and tying it. And that is your present moment. How long can you hold that? Become a master at holding your asshole in. Why? Because that's constantly pumping semen into your blood. That's some ancient esoteric shit that I read about in some far-flung book in Chinatown in San Francisco, tripping on acid. But I mean, it's like the way you arrive at these facts. But that's one of them, is that, hey, everybody's just sitting around with a loose asshole, especially men. And so all the semen that they're expelling through ejaculation and through bullshit is either coming out or dying. It's never getting released back into the blood and giving power. And this was a secret power that people who were living for thousands of years, they understood this, that you only have a certain amount of, let's put it like this. You have an unlimited amount of sperm, but as your body breaks down through the ravages of aging, your sperm becomes lower and lower quality to the point where it's inert. But at the same time, it still can give you power. It's inert for reproduction, but it still has enough power to give you if you can put it back into your blood through squeezing that we call the perineum. I don't know, the taint. Look, man, don't ask me. I find these things. These are fallen wisdom that people have forgotten, and so I put them here for you, not for any other reason. But if you connect those two, your brow with your asshole inside, and try to hold those two together at the same time, all the while taking breath through your nose, all the while keeping your tongue at the roof of your mouth, and then having a slight smile at the same time. And that is your face. That is the face that blocks any kind of negative emotion. And it also commands respect in the world. So you'll have a much easier time of life if you just keep that face on. And it requires a constant vigilance. It requires a constant evaluation of your feeling. Everything is an alarm clock for this. Mostly negativity. Any kind of negativity is an alarm clock for you. That first the breathing, and then the face, and then the asshole, and then the brow. Everything together. And then once you find yourself floating away from that, you'll see the negative thoughts come in. The breathing stops. Everything sort of falls apart and unravels. So this is a shield for you, and this is the thing that's going to kind of remind you of all the other teachings. Is once you bring yourself into your face, especially into this thing, you lock in a certain kind of presence and focus that is extremely powerful.